So our next section is about downloading speeds. So we're talking about the speed in which data is transferred. So the speed in which it comes down, or you copy, or you download a movie from the internet, or you upload a photo from Facebook on your mobile phone, and it is measured in number of bits per second. Okay, so BPS, bits per second, or also known as the bit rate. So small a case here, B for bits per second. Now, while we're talking about that, I just want you to have a look at here our open box, which no doubt you've seen this dialog box many times before when you're downloading something on your computer. It tells you how much has been downloaded, how much is to go. When this green line gets to the end, your download is complete. It tells you where it's going to download, and it also tells you the transfer rate, which is another name for the bit rate. But I want you to have a look at here. It says it in this particular example in capital K, capital B per second, which means that it's talking about kilobytes per second, which is common. And you will see that around, but in our course we're only doing bits per second as our rate, our transfer rate, which we're going to talk about it in terms of bits. However, I want you to be aware that it is out there in terms of bytes or kilobytes. The other thing to take note of is they did this rate with the slash there. That can also be with the P, bits, kilobytes, and a PS per second. So both notation is acceptable. You just need to be aware that there is both sets of notation. So here we're talking about the definition of a bit per second in terms of bits per second. That's 1 bit per second. Now, what are we talking about when we then go to kilobits per second? So how many bits per second in a kilobit per second? In this case, our kilo means our 1,000, just like our kilogram or our kilometre, but not like our kilobyte, which is 1,024. But here with our bits, they are what we are used to with our conversions of 1,000. So then going to mega, we're multiplying by 1,000 again, which gets us to 1 million. 1 giga multiplying by 1,000 again, which gets to 1 billion, 9 zeros. Then we get to 1 terabit per second, which is 1 trillion. 12 zeros. So I've put this note here because it is very important that when converting between bytes, kilobytes, megabytes, multiplying or dividing by 1,024. However, when we're going between bits or kilobits, or bits per second and kilobits per second, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about the rate or just the simple bits and kilobits, we are multiplying and dividing by 1,000. This diagram here is similar to what we had for our bytes and kilobytes, so we know how to read that diagram. So let's go straight into an example. Megabits per second to kilobits per second. We are multiplying by 1,000. So our 6 megabits per second to kilobits per second, we are multiplying by 1,000. Remember to show our working and remember to write the correct units, paying attention to whether we're writing a lowercase b or an uppercase b. 6,000 kilobits per second. Our next example, we are going from bits per second and we're going to megabits per second. So we're going to divide by 1,000 and we're going to do that twice because we're converting between two sets of units. So bits per second equals 7 million, and we're going to divide by 1,000 twice. Now to remember, we can write divided by 1,000 and we can write that 2 times, or we can just say to the power of 2. And that's going to give us an answer in megabits per second, which will be 7.3 megabits per second. Now to our next example, we're starting at gigabits per second and we're going to kilobits per second. So we're going to multiply by 1,000 twice. So 2.3 gigabits per second, and we're going to multiply that by 1,000 2 times. Once again, you can do your power of 2, and that is going to give us an answer in kilobits per second. So when we do that, we're going to get 2,300,000 kilobits per second. Fix that up. Kilobits per second. So our final example, we are going from bits per second all the way to gigabits per second. So we're going to divide by 1,000 3 times. Now there's a number of different ways you can think about that. You are crossing off 369 worth of zeros, okay, and we're just going to left with 4 gigabits. Or back to our definition, we had that 1 gigabit is 1 million bits per second. So therefore, 4 million bits per second will be 4 gigabits per second. But you can write that out the long way by doing that divided by 1,000 to the power of 3, and you are going to get 4 gigabits per second. So now to an example of where we'll be using this in our everyday life. We have 200 songs. They're approximately 4.1 megabytes each to be downloaded at a speed of 13.6 megabits per second. Remember, you need to pay attention to the B's, capital B, bytes, lowercase b, bits. So first of all, we want to work out how many megabytes are to be downloaded. So we have the size to download, and that is 200 worth of songs times 4.1 megabytes each song. I'm going to do that multiplication. I'm going to get there's 820 meg that I have to download, which is relatively sizable. Now we want to convert from megabytes to megabits. Now, just to remind you, to go from bytes to bits, we need to multiply by 8. Now, because I've got megabytes to megabits, I can't simply put a capital BM here and go across, and because I've got capital M's on both sides, multiply by 8. You can't do that. The reason being is because when we convert between megabytes, kilobytes, and then bytes, each time you are multiplying by 1,024. Where when you are going from megabits to kilobits to bits, you are multiplying by 1,000. So it doesn't work just to multiply these two by 8 and think it's going to work, because of this number is 1,024 and this number is 1,000. So that means we have to do it the long way. We have to go from megabytes to kilobytes to bytes, across to bits, kilobits, megabits. So that Therefore, this arrow here, you can't have. You can't go directly. You've got to go up the chain and then back down the chain. So let's do that. So we have number of bytes. We're going to start with 820 megabits. We're going to multiply that by 1024. We're going to multiply it by 1024 again to get to bytes. Our first conversion was to kilobytes. Our second conversion is to bytes. They're going to be big, large numbers. So make sure you're careful when you're writing them down. Put it on your calculator. Be able to read it off your calculator. So it's going to get a bit messy. To bytes. So now I want to convert that to bits. So I'm going to multiply by 8 to get me to the amount of bits that I want. That's this conversion here. So multiplying by 8, I'm going to get this another very large number. 58560 bits. It's now going from bits to megabits. I'm now going to divide by 1000, and I'm going to do that twice to get me to megabits. So that is 6878.658560 megabits. Now remember it said to the nearest whole number. So just be aware of that. So to the nearest whole number it's 6879 megabits. Okay. So now we're going to use that number because we want to calculate the number of minutes and seconds it takes to download all 200 songs using the rate of 13.6 megabits per second. So what this means here, that for every second, 13.6 megabits are downloaded, are transferred. So that's how much data you get per second. So we have 6,879 megabits to download. We want to work out what time that is going to take. So we have 6,879, and we're going to download that, divide that by 13.6 seconds. Okay, so how many lots of 13.6s go into 6,879, and we have 505.808.8235 lots of megabits. So that's how many seconds it's going to take us. That's seconds. All right, now I want to convert that to minutes. So I'm going to, there are 60 seconds in a minute, so I'm going to divide by 60 to get to how many minutes. I'm going to do that, divide by 60, and to get 8.43014. Didn't work very well. 430147059 minutes. Now, I want it in terms of minutes and seconds, so you're going to need to use your degrees, minutes, second button on your calculator, degrees, minutes, second button, or sometimes labelled as DMS button on your calculator to convert that. And when you do that, you're going to get 8 minutes and rounding it to the nearest second, you're going to round and it'll be 26 seconds. So that's how long it takes to download those 200 songs.